Well, today we're going to be sharing a little bit more about our kind of method of cross-sector collaboration, jumping into an interactive workshop. So we're hoping that folks will join in the chat and verbally. And then after the workshop, we'll be sharing about some ways to get involved with the Opportunity Project. So be sure to stick around for that. I'll turn it over to Radhika to share the first few slides about our model, and then I'll jump into the way that we work.
Sure thing. Thanks, Anna. So before we even dive into talking about our program, I just wanted to let everyone know that we actually participated in Open Data Week, New York City last year. Personally, it was the last conference that I went to before all the COVID shutdowns happened. So for context, this workshop that we're doing is actually very similar to the workshop we did last year, which is kind of teaching our framework for this program and showcasing how it can be used in different settings, but also how you can take this work into your own space, whether you're a community organizer, whether you work in state or local government, or whether you're a technologist. So that's a little bit of kind of why we're here today and why we're doing this. But generally, these two slides actually, the pictures here are from workshops that we've done in the past that we did in Chicago, I think also in Washington, D.C. And so we really have different ways of engaging folks through these types of workshops. So we're excited to do this with you all. So I'm just going to talk a little bit more about the Opportunity Project as a whole, and then we'll also have Q&A if anyone has questions about the program itself. So generally, as I said, the Opportunity Project is a program that's based out of the US Census Bureau, and our program brings together technologists, government, and communities to rapidly prototype digital products, all of which that are powered by federal open data that solve real-world problems for people across the country. So what does all that mean? That means that we have been working with companies, with nonprofits, and lots of different groups to facilitate this process. So the way that TOP works is through a 12-week tech development sprint that really starts with federal agencies targeting national challenges for data-driven innovation. So what that looks like is we've tackled a variety of challenges. Last year, actually, in particular, we focused on environmental topics, including ocean plastic pollution, air quality, economic self-sufficiency, as well as disaster response. And these are the ones on the right are actually things that we have tackled in the past as well, things like advancing entrepreneurship, supporting refugees, civics education, as well as rural economic development. And this year, actually, we'll talk about it at the end about what kind of our themes will be, but we are going to be exploring things like COVID-19 economic recovery and things like that. So that's actually why that's the theme of our workshop today. Another way that, as I had mentioned, so the federal agencies target the challenges, and then tech teams actually sign up to work on these challenges that they tackle in 12-week sprints. So normally we run our sprints over the summer, and tech teams can be from civic tech organizations, they can be from companies, but those are the technologists, developers, designers, data scientists that really sign on to actually build something during the sprint. And after that, during the sprint, we assemble a coalition of experts to support each team and accelerate their progress. So as I mentioned, we have federal government involved. They really act as policy experts and can guide the challenge from the federal level. We have user advocates that come from community organizations, NGOs, as well as state and local government. And those are the folks that are really important in making sure that we're tackling challenges that are actually affecting people on the ground. And they help to make sure that technology is actually going to help create a solution. And we definitely don't want these products to just not get used and not make an impact. So they're there to really make sure that these things get user tested and are built with users in mind. We also have product advisors that help with product sustainability and go-to-market strategies. And then we also have data experts and data stewards that make sure that the federal open data that we bring in is actually understandable by the different technologists. So they help to just support the ecosystem around data. So throughout that 12-week process, we have a variety of milestones that kind of move things along. We start with user research to make sure that the technologists really understand users' needs at a community level. Next, we have data exploration, which is when technologists can speak to the data stewards and really dive into the details of how do you use the data, what information can you find from it, and ask whatever technical questions they need to. And then additionally, we also have 2 demos that allow people to build out their products and then receive feedback from all of the different stakeholders we have involved. So we have a concept pitch and then a beta demo. And then all of this work launches publicly at a demo day. And during that demo day, that is time for the technologists to showcase their product, to share the work that they did, but also to help connect with end users in different communities or groups that might actually be able to use their product. So if anyone's been following us longer than this, then maybe we also saw you at our demo day this past December. It was actually 3 days long, and we did a lot of different types of interactive events that kind of facilitated connection between all these different communities. Some of our collaborators that you'll see on the next slide are very broad-ranging. We've worked with universities like MIT and Columbia University, as well as George Mason University here in Virginia. But we've also worked with a variety of big and small companies like IBM, Redfin, Ushahidi as well, New America, but we've actually worked with startups and smaller organizations too. So if you're seeing this process as something that you want to get involved with from a company lens, or even for if you're part of a Code for America Brigade, definitely reach out to us and we can see how we can get you involved. So I know that I said a lot. I'll pause there just to hear if anyone has any questions on the process, and in just a few minutes after Q&A, we'll actually dive into the workshop and the interactive part of this workshop. So yeah, any questions about the Opportunity Project, feel free to type in the chat as well. Okay, great. No questions about the Opportunity Project. We can also take them later. But with that, let's just dive right into, yeah, also I'm seeing a question in the chat.
Yeah, there's a question. Are the technologists from those organizations mentioned, and do they collaborate full-time during the sprint? That's a really great question. So the tech teams that Radhika mentioned typically join from one organization. So each sprint will have 12 tech teams who each participate from a particular organization for the most part. And so the technologists mentioned are typically from the organization themselves, as opposed to like independent people forming a team. In terms of the full-time versus part-time, everyone participates part-time. It's a volunteer opportunity, and so we know that folks have other obligations going on, so we never expect that anyone is contributing, 40 hours a week to their work. However, it really depends on kind of the product and the team. Some teams are developing something as part of an existing product that they're kind of adding to, or are using the Opportunity Project model to further their work. So for example, City Ventures participated in 2 of our sprints, and they were creating this product, and within each sprint they kind of added to it and added new data sets and new features, but it was part of kind of a full-time role of folks within the team. Versus for other teams, it might be more of a CSR, corporate social responsibility kind of project that they're doing on the side in addition to their typical work. So it really depends. We don't expect that anyone is spending full-time on the product, but if that aligns with a goal of your organization, you're welcome to do that. It also looks like there's a question about opportunities for individuals to be on a team. So like I mentioned, typically on the technology side, teams sort of join from an existing organization, and part of that is that whoever develops the product owns the resulting IP, so it can be easier when it's from an existing organization. That being said, we certainly have had folks join from individuals from different organizations, or universities have joined together to develop something. So it's definitely a possibility, and you should definitely still reach out. We have some slides about how to get involved, but if you go on our website and sign up for updates, we'll kind of be in touch regularly when we have new sprint opportunities.
Yeah, thank you for these questions, everyone. And I just dropped a link that allows you to kind of stay up to date on what we're doing. So if you want to go ahead and just drop your email into that form, we do send out regular updates on when our upcoming sprints are, what the themes are, and how you can get involved. So that's definitely one way to stay connected with us.
And I see another question about how often workshops happen. We participate in quite a few public-facing events, and so every few months we are participating in different workshops, kind of facilitating different workshops. So if you sign up for our updates, we'll let you know when we're facilitating something so that you can sign up to a topic that particularly aligns to the work that you do. And then within the sprints, we facilitate quite a few workshops for the tech teams and the user advocates to really connect and collaborate. And the next question is very aligned. What do user advocates do? So those are community leaders, NGOs, others who represent potential end users of the product. So the tech teams are developing public-facing products. So the end users are going to be specific communities. So that could be state and local government. It could be schools, whatever the challenge is. There's going to be a particular group of folks who would be users of that product. And we bring in user advocates to represent those groups. So tech teams and user advocates have conversations early on where user advocates share about the challenges and the needs happening on the ground. And then to make sure that tech teams are really developing products that are aligning to needs on the ground and not just, the federal challenge as they understand it, but really what's happening in communities. And so user advocates are really partners in that process to make sure that we're taking a human-centered design approach and really thinking about the end user from the start. Great.
Awesome.
Well,
thanks
if there
so much.
aren't any, yeah, thank you all so much for dropping questions in the chat. This is great.
Yeah, and one thing I'm just going to say too, so Lorena, thank you for dropping that link. If anyone's just interested in learning about our work, our process, and all the things that we're talking about right now, we do have our website at opportunity.census.gov. So the link that Lorena dropped is a little bit more about our roles and the different participants, but you can definitely feel free to explore that website as a resource, and we'll also be highlighting a few of the resources that we have available for the public towards the end of this workshop as well. But yeah. So Anna, do you want to take the next slide?
Yeah, happy to. So today we're going to be using the Opportunity Project model that we just shared about of really human-centered technology design, and we're going to brainstorm 3 things. So challenges related to COVID-19 economic recovery, key information or data that's needed to solve some of those challenges, and then people or organizations to collaborate with to create solutions. And in the room today, we think we have folks from government, technology, communities, which is really representative of a typical top sprint in terms of the type of people in the room. And these perspectives really come together to brainstorm challenges and ways to get solutions for these really important problems. So before we start, we want to actually confirm who is in the room. So if folks wouldn't mind dropping in the chat what kind of background describes you. So technologist, government, data expert, community leader, or other, please feel free to let us know who you are. We'll give folks a minute or two to do that, but we'd really love to know what kind of perspectives we have represented.
Awesome. And feel free to drop in your organization as well if you're open to sharing. But it looks like we have some geospatial analysts, data expert, combination of all the roles, data science students. Awesome. Very cool. Nonprofit as well, NYC emergency management, interlocal government. Okay, very cool. We have a good mix of all these different roles, which is very cool.
Great. Community board, researchers. So this is great because it's really representative of all the different perspectives that we often bring together through top sprints. And so we're really happy that we have all of these types of groups represented. So the first exercise that we're going to be diving into is really brainstorming what are the most pressing challenges that are related to COVID-19 economic recovery facing your organization or the communities or stakeholders that you work with. So I know we have a lot of researchers, we have a lot of technologists, we have a lot of community leaders and local and state government leaders. So really whatever community you represent, please just take some time. We'll give you 2 minutes to do a rapid brainstorm, but really just think about like, what are the challenges of economic recovery that you're facing? And then we'll start to think about kind of solutions to some of those challenges, but really thinking about what the challenges are. And then if you want to start thinking about some of the strategies that you're taking right now, that would be great. So take a few minutes to just brainstorm 3 of your top COVID-19 economic recovery challenges.
Yeah, and also just before we dive in, to provide some context too. So oftentimes in the Opportunity Project, when we are aiming to tackle a challenge or a problem, we like to start with something that we call a problem statement. And so this exercise is really just to teach everyone about this initial part of when you're going to jump into tackling a problem or just like a pressing challenge. It's really helpful to kind of think about what is the situation now and what are we experiencing now and kind of where do we want to move towards. So that's why we're starting with this first question. And after this, we're actually going to identify, what is the information that you need, who do you need involved, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the details of how you can go about solving this challenge as well. So as Anna mentioned, the first question is, what are the most pressing challenges related to COVID-19 economic recovery facing your community or your organization? We'll give you 2 minutes to brainstorm, and then we're going to do a share out after this as well. So feel free to type into the chat, feel free to write down on your own sticky notes, but we'll be doing a share out right after this. So we can start the 2-minute timer now. Okay, we'll give you another 30 seconds. Okay, so next we're just gonna open it up and hear what people have come up with. I was also brainstorming over here, so I have a few ideas. But I'll just open it up to folks on the line. You're welcome to unmute or you're welcome to put your ideas in the chat. But we're asking on folks to share one of your top 3 challenges. What is something that your community or organization is facing in regards to COVID-19 economic recovery?
And please feel free to either
notes on our end.
Just feel free to drop in the chat or speak up. We'd love to hear either way. If you want to just share what organization or type of organization you're coming from, that would be great. And if you hear someone say something that really resonates, please feel free to let us know. We'd love to hear kind of a challenge that many people or organizations are facing. And we have a document here for kind of sharing out those ideas. So you'll be able to see as folks are sharing. So I see one comment in the chat, and I'll read these, but if anyone wants to speak up who wrote them, please feel free. There is one that says, how can we support immigrant-owned businesses access financial relief?
That was me.
Oh, great. Would you like to add some context? Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest issues is just making sure, one, that, there is overall a lack of financial resources for businesses. And unfortunately, immigrant businesses are the last to find about some of those opportunities like grants, etc. And oftentimes they're not in their language or are not accessible that way. There's also some technology challenges to make sure that, they can qualify as in terms of having all the paperwork ready, payroll and all that, back-end paperwork. So it's really challenging to qualify in those terms also, not just, submit an application.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, and certainly a really large challenge as we think about economic recovery for sure. Thank you. And then there's another comment that says, as a mother of 2, I always wonder how safe the school is for us to put the kids back to school. Is there any protocol for us to evaluate it? Would anyone like to speak up on that particular challenge?
Hi, I'm Lena.
Hi, Lena.
Hi, I wrote this challenge because I always wonder about it, and the school recently sent us email, told us there was some new case appeared, especially for COVID-19 mutation. There's, it's it's frustrating. So I just wonder, as a parent, how could we evaluate?
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense, and as schools continue to reopen and teachers are starting to get vaccinated, but of course students aren't, that's a huge challenge.
Yeah, I don't know whether we can do something for them, so people including me don't need to worry about it too much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'll just pause and for any of these, if they resonate with you or you're experiencing a similar challenge, please do feel free to speak up or put it in the chat. We'd love to kind of note when there's a challenge that's really resonating with more than one person.
Another one that I'm seeing in the chat is reaching low-income communities and households to help with their financial needs during these tough times. That's a really important one as well. So I added that to a sticky note. Does anyone want to speak about that, or does that resonate with anyone?
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so this kind of touches on what you said, but it actually really builds more off of what Lena said, which is that providing financial aid or aid really for caregivers. So in general, for like caregivers it can mean parents, it could mean people, you know, of middle age who or anyone who's caring for a senior. And you know, before the pandemic, this wasn't, it was often very hard, but especially during the pandemic, it's gotten super hard. Like especially for Lena, if she doesn't know when her kids are going to be going to school, let's say they're at school for a week or two, and she's like, great, I can work, and then they're not home, then they're home. Yeah, that whole, it seems like a mess to me, all of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So financial aid for caregivers, but also like just providing like information and just support to caregivers in general. I think that's definitely a big challenge. Thank you for sharing.
I'm also seeing some comments around technology access and, you know, ability to work from home, but then also new skills, like tech kind of skills to help people, you know, get jobs where they could work from home. Would anyone like to speak to those? Well, we certainly heard that technology accessibility and availability and broadband are huge challenges. We had a problem statement this past summer about rural economic development and rural communities and in urban communities. Broadband accessibility has been a huge challenge. Would anyone else like to speak up about any of the other challenges that they posted about?
I'm sorry, I posed that question and just realized you were asking for someone to speak on it. So we serve caregivers, kinship caregivers, and providing the resources for the families and connecting them to resources. Because of the COVID-19 restrictions, most of the resource accessibility, applications and signups are online. And so most of those families don't have that access. So it's been, that's been a challenge on how to work around it with having the restrictions from the various agencies. So that's something, trying to figure out how to work around.
Absolutely. And I see some more comments around accessibility of unlimited internet, and that seems to align quite well with what you're talking about as well. And then there's two more comments in the chat if anyone would like to speak up about them. One was around a nonprofit not getting access to or not being qualified for larger grants. And then the other one was about immigrant population and a lack of access to small business COVID impact data as related to immigrant businesses. Would anyone like to speak up on those, or do either of those resonate quite a bit and folks would like to share? Or talk a little bit about that. Okay. Any other challenges that? Oh, yes. Go ahead.
One place I would recommend is checking with their consulates. Some of the consulates receive funding, I know, for various programs, and so that would be a good place to start. And seeing if there are any immigrant or refugee organizations in their areas that can support some of those services. I know there's like a refugee and immigrant organization that receives all of their funding from the consulate of the various countries, and so that's a good place to start if they have not tapped into that resource already.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I see a request in the chat if you're able to put, anyone would like to put any resource information in the chat. It seems like folks would be happy to receive it. But that makes a lot of sense. Consulates from countries.
Yeah, and I'm also seeing a question about the COVID-19 data on the impact on small businesses. I think if I'm reading that right. And we're actually going to talk about this towards the end, but I did just want to raise that there are some different Census Bureau data sets out there that specifically have to do with the impacts on small businesses. So I dropped one link there, but I'm gonna look for another one and see if I can drop it in the chat as well. But that link that I shared is one good place to start with just data on the impacts on small businesses. So that's one resource. Okay, awesome. Does anyone else want to share thoughts on this initial question again of what is a challenge that your community or your organization is facing related to COVID-19 economic recovery? Any other thoughts? Okay, awesome. Well, as you can see on the slide, I did write down a few of the ideas that we came up with. So we are trying to document the ideas you're coming up with. So next, we're actually going to take it to another set of brainstorming questions. So on this slide, now we're going to think more about what is the data or information that you need to solve this problem, and also who do you need to work with to better understand this challenge. So I actually think we have time to break it down a little bit. So for this first brainstorm, let's actually just tackle the first question. What is the data or information that you need to solve this challenge? So again, this is kind of done individually. So if you are thinking about, broadband access, internet access, try to think of what is the information that you need or data specifically to be able to tackle that challenge. Or if you're thinking about how to evaluate if schools are safe to put your children back in, think about what is the information that you need for that. So so we'll give folks another 2 minutes to brainstorm the first question of what data or information do you need to solve this challenge that you've come up with? And we'll give 2 minutes for brainstorm. And then when we open it up, if folks can actually type in like the challenge and then the information just to kind of keep it all in one message, that would be super helpful for us. So again, I'll give folks 2 minutes and you're just answering the question of what data or information do I need to solve this challenge? And as you're brainstorming, we define data very broadly. That can just be resources. It can be information that you need. It can be news that keeps you up to date. So data is pretty broadly described in this case, but it can also just be information that's relevant. And I'll give you all another 30 seconds. Okay, well, let's open it up for some discussion on this. So the next slide is actually the where I'll be kind of taking notes on everything. So do folks want to share out what data or information do you need to solve this challenge? I put in, Linda, I put your question on for the challenge of employment. Where do I go to find work? Definitely a big challenge. Yeah, this is super helpful. I'm seeing another one that says helping low-income communities during pandemic. There's not so much data available in the public domain that provides a view of how low-income communities have been helped by different organizations. So the question is, what resources are available and how have they been reached? So does anyone want to speak more about that one?
Yes, this is Samish. So we are, the only reason that I'm posting this question is we as an institution have set up specific meetings with the nonprofits in each of the markets where we operate. And those meetings, were the only source of information that we could hear, the ground level information that, how those communities have been impacted and what sources of information or help that they are looking for, thus only through verbal communication with various nonprofits. There was no other option for us to find out from any other data avenue or source that, okay, how to handle the situations, whether it's homelessness or it's people out of work or small businesses struggling. The only way we could find is, having multiple meetings set up with nonprofits who helped us in giving us examples of the situations in their communities. Does that help?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm taking notes. I think that's certainly, I can see how it's challenging to understand how low-income families have been impacted and also difficult because you're searching for information in so many different places. So yeah, I think information that showcases how families have been impacted, but also what is available to them versus what isn't, and kind of what's helped and what hasn't. I think that would be very helpful.
And what we heard is, even the PPP loans that have been given to small businesses, it was very surprising that even in those areas that are heavily ethnically populated, with Latinos and Black and African American communities, only a fraction of those businesses really got the PPP loans, for example. The percentage of small businesses by minority could be in that area, like 80%, but only 20% of the 80% really got PPP loans. Either they were not educated about those options by the government, or they were not contacted by the financial institutions, for example.
Yeah, thank you for sharing.
I see another comment in the chat about knowledge of who or what families need in terms of device or technology access or training around internet or tech. Does anyone want to speak to that? That's a really great question of really identifying what the need is.
Because of the COVID restrictions, most of the time families would go to the various resource centers or known places for resources. They would just walk in or come in or call. And now that a lot of things have been put to virtual and staff are working from home, it's hard to gauge who actually needs what specific type of supports. So that's one of the, just a part of our challenge, trying to figure those things out without it being last resort situations for families. So as opposed to it being a dire situation because they didn't have the resource or the connection to the resource beforehand. So, and most of the families that we serve are older family members, some in rural, some in suburban, metro areas. However, they're used to just whatever is familiar to them. So if they only go to the church for a service, if they need something, then if the church is closed now because of COVID, it's a last minute resort where it's like a dire need. So just trying to identify that. And then the other things that would help resolve those would be the other things that are listed.
Right, absolutely. So planning ahead and really understanding what the needs are before that dire situation comes into play. That makes perfect sense. And so I think you're saying, like, who are the partners, who are the government agencies, or who are the funding resources or partners that could be engaged. So that makes a lot of sense. Any other data or information that folks would be looking for to solve some of the challenges that you mentioned? I'll just show you slide 15 again in terms of what challenges we talked about. I know there was one around financial aid for caregivers. There was evaluation of, safety of going back to school, relief for small businesses, especially that were immigrant owned. Would anyone like to brainstorm any information that you might need to start to solve that challenge or better understand that challenge?
I think for that specifically, I think we need all the information that we can get, either local, state, and federal, on who was able to access PPP loans, for example, or any grants provided by state or local government, brought down by immigration status, whether the person is immigrant or not, which I think is the challenge. Absolutely.
Any other ideas? Or I'm curious, I know we had a few kind of data experts or data visualization folks in the room. Is there any specific data sets that you found that are useful to address some of these challenges or broadly economic recovery for COVID that you'd want to highlight to the group?
Hey, Anna, this is Eric Coyle. So I serve as, for those of you that, because I didn't introduce myself, I serve as a data dissemination specialist for the Census Bureau, and we do have a lot of ACS data relating to the computer internet use of households, and that does get down to the block group. So you can look at a very small geographic area for, well, if you're not familiar with what a block group is, it's an area that consists of a population size of anywhere from 600 to 3,000. The block group is not the base level. The base levels are block level, but only decennial census data is available at that level, of which, of course, we only have currently 2010 decennial census data until the 2020 is published and available to the public. But for now, the ACS data is still relevant and does get down to the block group area. And so you can identify using that data. Just as an example, I'll put a link, and that's just a thematic map. You can actually go and click on the table of that same map and look at the table view, and it will provide you information related specifically to with an internet, dial-up, other, like the percentage or the number, the estimate with the margin of error, et cetera, for down to the block group. This data is also available at the tract level. You can do the same for income and poverty, identify areas where we know that there's families and specific characteristics related to those families that are found to be below the poverty threshold. So I definitely recommend that as far as using that census data to identify areas of need, whether it's in regard to income, poverty, and of course computer internet use as well. And if you need any help with finding this data, accessing it, I'm always available. You can reach me. My information is usually readily available. I'm on Slack as well. So you can always just shoot me an email if you need help getting data, looking for data when it comes to the census data, especially in regard to the ACS.
Thank you so much, Eric. And Eric is someone who we work with very frequently and is really great in terms of answering questions and really knowledgeable about census data. So do feel free to reach out. Eric, it looks like there's a question directed to you in the chat. Are those census tract number or block group numbers?
Yeah, so the link in the chat right now is actually related to block groups. So those are actually block groups. So if you click on them, you can actually zoom into the map. There's at the bottom right hand corner, there's a little plus minus sign. You can zoom in or use your the wheel on the mouse thing. And then if you click on any one of those, you should see it'll tell you it's a block. It's actually a block group that's part of a census tract. So, but no, I'm sorry. Yes, the tract numbers are there, and then if you scroll further down, it'll tell you that that block group is part of census tract 14203.
Great, thank you. And I also saw another question in the chat about how the work done during this workshop will be used afterwards. And we will be talking about opportunities and of kind of engaging later on once we finish the kind of more interactive piece. But I did want to note that one of our major themes for this year of our sprints is going to be kind of the world after COVID-19, and part of that is COVID economic recovery, and another part is more environmentally focused. And so this is going to be one of our key themes. And so that some of the challenges that we're brainstorming can certainly be used to kind of continue this work and really inform some of the problem statements that'll be developed, but also help you all start to think about, if you would want to engage in a sprint as a user advocate and share your perspective, or, what other organizations or information might be needed for this kind of work. So certainly this is exactly kind of a launching off point for that work that we will be doing on this exact topic.
Mm-hmm. Thanks so much, Anna, for answering that. So that also kind of leads me to the last question that we're going to have you all brainstorm on slide 18. So the last question is, who do you need to work with to better understand the problem, access key information, and build a solution? That's a loaded question. There's probably a different answer for each bucket of information right there. But I think generally the question is, who do you need to work with to solve this challenge? And it can be a variety of people. You're welcome to list as many people, as many organizations as you need, but that is the last question that we're going to have folks brainstorm on for another 2 minutes. So again, we can flip back to the earlier slides if you want to see what we've brainstormed so far. But this question again is, who do you need to work with or collaborate with to build a solution or try to solve this challenge? So I'll give folks another 2 minutes to brainstorm on that. Okay, I'll give folks another 30 seconds. Who do you need to collaborate with to tackle these challenges? Okay, would love to hear people's thoughts on who you need to work with, who you would like to collaborate with. These, again, can be people you're already working with, or people maybe that are difficult to connect with, or that you don't have a connection to, but you think could be integral to solving these different challenges. Does anyone want to share? Drop into the chat.
This is great. This is a wonderful list. So SBA, working with small businesses, immigrant serving organizations. We've certainly worked with nonprofit organizations. We had a problem statement around assisting recently resettled refugees kind of connect with resources. And so there were quite a few community-based organizations that support those communities. Would you like to speak to any of the other ones that you listed, Carla?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
I just asked if you wanted to share about any of the types of organizations that you listed out here.
Well, you know, just kind of getting, I think SBA kind of is the place where we can get more of that data to make sense of everything. And then nonprofit organizations are the ones that are connected to the communities and really know what's happening on the ground. And then just that connection between, you know, the middle financial institutions, right? The ones that are actually providing those either grants or their financial or the loans, making sure that they're also connected to whatever solution is created.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And then there's another comment around nonprofits and community-based organizations. Would anyone like to speak to that one?
Hi, it's Samish again. So yeah, as I mentioned that, you know, a lot of this ground level information comes to us from those people who are on the ground, who are working in these communities. And that's where we get a lot of intelligence, or the market intelligence of, you know, what the actual needs are for those communities. And we also work with the advocacy groups, you know, that are working in favor of those communities and the local leaders. One of the, you know, good, you know, place where we can get the information is with the local chamber of commerce. You know, having that connection in those communities definitely gives us that local level information of what the needs are of those communities. And that's where we went for the last year or so, especially during the COVID and pandemic. We engaged and we participated with a lot of webinars with the Chamber of Commerce to get the information and help them any way we can.
Absolutely. And a lot of the organization types that you listed, you know, in our process would be great user advocates and really representing those community needs on the ground, sharing the information that they have, and really just helping the tech teams make sure that they're understanding you know, what's happening on the ground level and developing products that are really addressing those needs, and also pulling in any more local information or data.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, going back to some of the ideas we had originally brainstormed, I think the two that are coming to mind are, you know, the whole thing about evaluating schools and if they're safe for children to return to. Is there any like data or even collaborators that folks came up with that you think would be helpful in solving that challenge? Or any other thoughts on how immigrant-owned businesses can access financial relief? Any more data or collaborators or organizations that are needed to help with that problem? Okay, I'm seeing some answers in the chat. So Jarwanda, thank you for posting again. So the data on how school children, or how many children and staff had to leave school because of COVID, certainly could be helpful. I'm also thinking information on, I think even data on like what makes schools safe again, and information on how there are different safety precautions taking place at school. I think that could also certainly be helpful. And I think in terms of collaborators for that, it sounds like, you know, having teachers be part of the process and communicating that information, I think could be very helpful as well. Two more. And Linda, thank you for sharing these specific organizations. I think that's definitely very helpful. Okay. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to share regarding collaborators to solve some of these challenges, or data that's needed, or anything else? Okay. Well, thank you all for sharing these ideas. As Anna mentioned, so we are going to be running different sprints on this whole process. We're going to be running sprints utilizing this opportunity project process. And I think some of the ideas that you all came up with, this is super helpful and really interesting to see what is going on at the community level and what's needed, because I think that can certainly help to influence what is worked on this year and kind of what the different priorities are. So first off, just want to say thank you so much for participating and for sharing your ideas. And for the next few minutes, we're also just going to talk more about some other resources that are available to you all, as well as talking about the process for getting involved in the Opportunity Project. So Anna, I'll turn it back over to you.
Perfect, thanks. And thank you all for your participation in this more interactive piece. So we wanted to share kind of some opportunities for getting involved with the Opportunity Project using our model. So the first one is, please feel free to visit our website, opportunity.census.gov. You can take a look at our past sprints. You can take a look at those problem statements and how they're laid out, what agencies we've worked with in the past. But you can also sign up for updates. And so that way you can know kind of when we're recruiting for a new sprint and what those themes are. And like I mentioned, one of the key themes this year will be the world after COVID-19 and economic recovery, sustainability. And then another theme, given that we're within the Census Bureau, we'll be focusing on is engaging communities and building trust in the 2020 decennial census, and helping communities really see themselves in that data. And so if folks are interested in participating in any of those themes, do sign up for our mailing list, and we'll be in touch on kind of future sprints and ways to get involved. I also wanted to mention for any federal agencies who are in the room today, in December, we launched the TopX Toolkit, which enables federal agencies to use the TOP model that we just described to actually facilitate their own sprints, but on modifiable and flexible timelines, and really to address challenges that you all are facing, that you see as really key national challenges within your agencies. And so in the fall, we worked with the Department of State in their Office of Foreign Assistance, and they utilized the toolkit to facilitate a sprint. And then this winter, we're working with the Department of Health and Human Services right now on a TopX sprint focused around COVID-19 data diagnostics. So if you're a federal agency, please do feel free to check out our TopX toolkit. I also see a question in the chat about how will last year's census data affect sprints and other work this year. So that's that second theme that I mentioned, which is really building trust around the 2020 census and helping communities see themselves within that data. And so we'll be doing one sprint at least around that topic of really asking technologists to use the new 2020 census decennial data that's coming out and really think about how can communities see themselves and really make sure that that data resonates. And actually that collaboration will be not only technologists developing products, but actually also artists creating visualizations and different pieces of art using that data, but really helping people visualize and connect to that data. So again, if that's something that sounds of interest, please sign up for our website signups, and we'll be in touch about that soon. And then I also wanted to mention another toolkit on our website is the product development toolkit. And so for technologists who are interested in using our model, but maybe can't participate in a particular sprint or don't have a team, they can use our toolkit, which actually guides teams through the process that we use for each of our sprints, and really helps them think about, how do you form a team, and how do you pick which challenge you want to focus on, and explore data and interview user advocates. And so all of that information is there in a really user-friendly way, and there are resources that kind of touch on each of those different topics. So that's a really great opportunity to check out our model and really engage with it. And I am going to turn it over to Radhika to talk a little bit about some data resources that the Opportunity Project has, and that specifically the Census Bureau offers. So I'll turn it over to you, Radhika.
Yeah, thank you. So I just dropped a few links into the chat that are specifically about what I'm going to talk about now. So one of the resources available on the Opportunity Project site is our Data Curation Hub, which showcases different sorts of federal open data that are aligned to specific challenges. So if anyone here is working on challenges related to environmental topics or COVID-19 economic recovery specifically, we do have modules on COVID-19 data, and as well as an entire workforce module, which has data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and many other federal agencies. So I think we did get a few questions of, you know, where can we find this information, whether that's about which small businesses have gotten PPP loans and things like that. So we do have some of those data sets available on the Data Curation Hub. So I encourage folks to go in and look at that and see if you're finding what you need. Additionally, there's another specific COVID-19 data module on the Census Bureau website which is covid19.census.gov. That was something I had dropped in the chat earlier as well, that has a lot of data and information about the different demographic details of who has received help and you know, the different disparities amongst different communities. So that data is also really helpful. I'm curious if Lorena or Eric want to speak to any census data that is available as well. We can just open the floor to you all if you want to share anything as well.
Yeah, so the COVID-19 is basically taking ACS data that's currently available from the 2019 collection year. And so I will say that if you are interested in getting more current data, there is the Pulse survey data, which is currently the most, it's the most current data that we have available. The only problem with the Pulse data right now is that yes, you can download the data. It's still kind of difficult to apply into, I guess, different developer software to, you know, create your own mapping tools with it or use it. But it can be, you know, it can complement other data that we have available. But the household pulse survey data is the most current data we have right now. And I definitely recommend looking at that. There's a business pulse side of it too. So we're looking at businesses, the data from business owners out there that we're getting. And it's a monthly survey, and we are also getting, of course, the household one. So we will get the 2020 ACS data released, as we do every single year in the fall. So we'll get the 1-year estimates for populations of 65,000 or more that'll come out in September. October, we'll get the supplemental estimates for populations of 20,000 or more. And then in December, we'll get that 5-year data set, which takes 60 months worth of data and produces estimates. And that's what allows us to get to those block group geographies, those much smaller geographies, using that 5-year data. So I would look out for that to see the differences. As far as the decennial census data, you know, if anybody has any questions about that, I'll post a link for that in regard to where you can go to get information. There's a director's blog on that, as well as you can still go to the 2020 census site to get more information on that as well, to find out, you know, how that's all being processed and how it will be published, etc.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Awesome. So I think with that, that's our workshop. That is kind of all the activities we wanted to go through with everyone, as well as sharing just ways to get involved and stay connected with us. So again, as I mentioned at the beginning, you can go to opportunity.census.gov/get-involved. And we do have a way for you to kind of share your email with us so we can send you information on when our upcoming sprints are and things like that. So definitely do feel free to stay connected with us. Also, our email is right here, census.opportunityproject@census.gov. If anyone is interested in connecting directly with us, you're welcome to send us a note there too. But with that, I'll just kind of open it up for questions. Again, if anyone has any questions or thoughts that they want to share. But again, just thank you for your participation, and it was great to meet everyone. And again, this is recorded, so I can share it out afterwards. But yeah, please let me know if you have any questions, where we can keep the line open for a bit. Thank you, everyone. Oh, and also just wanted to shout out that we do have one more event tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. And if you want to see some of the outcomes of the Opportunity Project, specifically what products have been created, what data has been used, and really the different applications of this work, we'll actually be doing a deep dive into that. So again, that is tomorrow at 11 a.m. And let me just share the open data link again with everyone. Okay, great. So if anyone's interested, you can RSVP through that link. But again, that's tomorrow. You can also see it on the Open Data Week website. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Looks like no one has any questions, so maybe we can end a little early. But thanks, Anna, thanks Eric and Lorena for being here.
Thanks everyone. Bye.